There's an old Bob Dylan song that starts out, you got to serve somebody. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you've got to serve somebody. And that's kind of the point that Joshua is making today. Joshua at this point is a very old man. He's about ready to die. And so for one last time, he summons the 12 tribes to come together because he's not sure they've got it yet. And he wants to try one last time to get the point across. I'm sure as he's standing there waiting, as the tribes are beginning to assemble, he's remembering back. He remembers what it was to be a slave in Egypt. He remembers what it was like when God set them free. The tremendous joy and celebration of that night when everybody was just skipping along because God had set them free. The terror they felt when there was the sea on one side and Pharaoh's army on the other, and the power with which God brought them safely through. He remembered all of the victories that he had won and how the only battle he ever lost was the one time he didn't listen to God. But he also remembered the time when he and Caleb and the 10 other scouts went into the Holy Land, when the tribes were right there. All they had to do was cross the river, and their promised land was theirs. But instead, they turned around and ran away. They said, we would rather die in the desert. Suddenly in that moment, Caleb and Joshua tried to tell them, God is with us, we can do this. But they said, no, we can't. They're so much bigger than we are. Their cities are massive. There's no way we can do this. And they basically were saying, God is irrelevant. Or as some people used to say about 40 years ago, God is dead. And so they chose to die in the desert rather than to go in. That's an answer, by the way, to you ladies who've told me several times that if Moses was a woman, she would have simply asked directions. They'd have been there in 2 weeks instead of 40 years. It wasn't the fact that he didn't know how to get there. It's that they didn't want to go in because they had decided God was irrelevant. Well, now it's toward the end of his life. Joshua is weighed down. He's an old man, weighed down by the years, weighed down by the burdens of his heavy responsibilities. You can almost see him standing there holding on to his staff, trying to keep himself up as the tribes finally gather in front of him. Maybe he said a prayer. And one last time the fire fell from heaven. One last time the Spirit touched him. And for one last time he was no longer this weak and tired old man. He once more was this young general. And he looked out at them and he said, make a choice. Decide whom you will serve. If you're going to serve the gods of this land, serve the gods of this land. If you're going to serve the gods of the Amorites, serve the gods of the Amorites. If you're going to serve the gods of your ancestors, serve the gods of your ancestors. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that's his challenge to us today. We live in a world today where people say God is irrelevant. That's the whole point of secularism. It's saying God doesn't matter. If he's not dead, he just doesn't matter. And what we're being asked to do today is to say, wait a minute. You make a choice. Are you going to serve the secular gods? Now, I know that none of you, or at least I hope none of you, when you get home tonight, sneak downstairs into your basement and open up your little cupboard door, and there you've got a statue of Chemosh or some other god there, that sort of thing. I know you're not going to do that tonight, but a lot of us worship the gods of wealth, the gods of power, and the gods of pleasure. Because what Joshua is asking us to do tonight is to make a choice between life and death. And it's surprising how many people choose death. We decide God is irrelevant, so we've got to fill ourselves somewhere because you and I are seeking people. We seek meaning, we seek purpose. We seek to know why we're here. And if you've decided God doesn't matter, well then you're cut off. So then we have to find something else to fill ourselves up with. So maybe it's a search for wealth, or a search for power, or a search for pleasure. And those things always let us down in the end, because that's the choice of death. Joshua, when he says, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord," what he is saying is, we'll serve the one who gives us life. When we were trapped by the shore of the sea, he came and set us free. When we were slaves, he set us free. He's given us hope. He's given us a future. He's given us life. And that's also what Jesus is saying today.